Hey everyone,
Hey everyone.
I'm Kiaya, Thrifty Redhead on Instagram,
I'm Caitlin. Did I thrift that closet on Instagram?
and welcome to Flip That Jawn.
We are two full-time resellers from Philly, and this is a weekly podcast that explores the ins and outs of reselling while linking arms with the reselling community to help grow and learn from each other.
We're excited to connect with you and new voices that will help to inspire and motivate you in your reselling journey. Join us as we learn more about ourselves, each other, and our ever-growing awesome reselling community.
Hey
guys, thank you for coming back and joining us. We are in episode 12, Flip That Jawn, and we are here with our special guest, Tamsin, at Tamsin Threads on Instagram. Tamsin, I'm so happy and thankful you were able to join us today as our special guest. Can you just give us a little bit of quick facts about you, you know, the who, what, when, where, why of Tamsin Threads?
Oh, yeah. Thanks for having me, guys. It was an honor to be asked to be on this podcast. You guys are killing it. So about me, my name is Tamsin. I'm located in Arizona, but I grew up in Oregon, so I visit Oregon a lot to see my family. And I'm Tamsin's Threads everywhere, YouTube, Poshmark, eBay, Mercari, Instagram. And I just opened up a new Instagram this week, shop.tamsinsthreads. And that way I'll be able to, divide up my reselling tips from my actual stuff that I sell. That's a little bit about me. I'm married of 8 years, almost 8 years. And we just got a puppy named Bilbo. Well, he's a year old, but he's a cute little puppy. He looks really old because he has like gray hair and stuff. Yeah, that's about me.
Oh my God, you said dogs, and I was like, hello, new best friend. Yeah, I was holding back the air horn sound for you, Tamsin, because I wanted to not interrupt your introduction. But super excited that you're here. Really excited to dive into things. Thank you for being here early. I know the time difference. So, thank you for spending your early morning with us. And yeah, so you're pretty much all over the internet. And we're definitely going to dive into that separate Instagram shop because I want to pick your brain because I know that you're doing a lot of vintage on that shop. So I definitely want to pick your brain on that, being a vintage reseller as well. But as we're here for this month, as our listeners know, is we're talking about sustainability. We know that's a huge part of reselling. So what I like to ask is, for resellers, everybody has their own definition. What does sustainability mean to you personally, and what does sustainability mean to your business?
Yeah, that's a great question. As far as sustainability, I did grow up in Oregon, like I mentioned, and so that was kind of a big part of our curriculum growing up, is like how to recycle. And then also growing up, I'm one of 5 kids, so we always went to the thrift store. Like I don't barely remember buying retail. And so thrifting is kind of a skill that I learned because of that, partly because of necessity and partly because I really enjoyed the thrill of the hunt with my dad. And so even as a teenager, my parents would give me a budget to go school shopping for my little sister because I enjoyed it so much. And so as far as sustainability goes, I think it's important to shop secondhand. And then, diet as well. So like eating lots of veggies and stuff and not consuming too much meat or cheese. I still am working on that. But for a while I was like strictly vegan, and that was really well for my health. But as far as business goes, in terms of sustainability, I like to look at like what's sustainable for me, but also sustainable for the environment. So reusing packaging, but also like preventing reseller burnout, because I have to make business decisions that I can keep up and stay consistent with. And so if something's not working, I have to change it up. Otherwise, I'm not going to be able to remain consistent.
Uh-oh, Kaya, she said the secret word vegan. And I was like, hello,
She
vegan
did.
sister.
She sure did. I told you, I knew you were going to just love Tamsin.
I know, we're like new best friends. I never know.
When we were thinking of sustainability, I was like, Tamsin. Like that was just like ran right across my mind. I was like, seriously, like we had to get Tamsin on here.
even in that short sentence, you just dropped a lot of gems. Being consistent, I think people forget about that. And I love that you were like, if you're going to be sustainable, sometimes you got to switch it up to be consistent. I think that's a very valid point that people forget about that. So I think that's already a gem. I always tell people, write down the notes. That's a note right there.
Yeah, definitely being consistent and, being knowledgeable about it. Because not everyone knows about, sustainability, what it is, what it means to be sustainable. So we kind of want to know like what it really is and how we can do our part in being sustainable.
And having a business model that is sustainable for you, like something that you can keep up and not too strenuous in that way. So if you have, for me, I've been actually trying to simplify a few things. I have a little bit too much going on, and it was causing a lot of anxiety and paralysis. And so figuring out what things to cut out so that I can continue to do reselling and bring in that income.
I was literally just about to ask you if there is, I like to dive into processes that every reseller has, especially when it comes to sustainability. So is there a method or a systems that you use for your business in reselling, particularly when it comes to sustainability, maybe when you source or your packaging that you could, again, I don't want everyone to give their trade secrets away. I'm not here for that.
Definitely. So with sourcing, I do a little bit, well, I did for a while, a little bit of consignment. I'm trying to phase out of that. So I was receiving inventory from people that I did a next door ad on when the lockdown first happened. And so I met a couple people who consistently have provided inventory where I haven't had to pay for it, but we split when it sells, we split it. And then I also do a lot of thrifting. As I mentioned, it's kind of one of the main reasons why I got into reselling is because I knew that I really loved thrifting. And I was like, wait, you can get paid for this? So thrifting, I like to go to the bins. And then I do mix it up. I do buy liquidation and returns a little bit so that we can have a couple of good name brands in there. And as far as packaging, I do ask a few people for them to save their boxes for me. So once they have a ton of boxes, I will just drop by their house and I will either keep it in the garage or I'll keep a couple in my office. So I have like a couple specific shelves just for packaging. So like tissue paper from orders that I've made on Poshmark or Amazon, poly mailers that I've cut open. Oops, sorry, I moved my water. Amazon mailers that I've cut open and I can just reseal them. And then on eBay, I actually used my shop to, because when you have like a subscription to eBay, you have a credit towards eBay shipping materials. So I purchased a bunch of stickers that say I'm recycled packaging. And then I just cut off the eBay part and put the sticker on whatever I'm using. So if it's like a janky package, I will put that sticker on it to kind of like, please excuse the mess, but this is reused, packaging. And then I also, with my inventory storage, I do have reusable gallon bags. So when something sells, I find the bin and I pull out the number and then I put it in tissue paper. I try to buy recycled tissue paper and I do use a sticker. So there's definitely room for improvement, but the little changes here and there really helps. And then as far as photographing for like stuffing my shoes, I reuse tissue paper and packaging and all that. I'm trying to think of what else that I use that might be more sustainable. I use a lot of IKEA bags. So I try not to use a lot of plastic bags when I'm going to Goodwill. Sometimes I forget.
The recyclable bags, I purchased them like whenever I'm at a store at a checkout and I see one at the register because that's where they usually keep them, I will buy them. So I have like an entire IKEA bag full of recyclable bags. And when I'm out, I don't take them. And I need to really like remind myself to take them because I don't like taking plastic bags. Like this thing is always filled with plastic bags and I don't like using them because I just find it to be a waste. And I feel bad at the end of the day when I have come home from grocery shopping and I have an enormous amount of plastic bags. And I'm like, what am I going to do with this? This is not good. So taking that small step of using, recyclable bags is definitely being sustainable. So I like that. that method.
I want to ask too, Tamsin, because I know there, us being on the East Coast and the West Coast, there are differences, and everyone has different spots and everything like that all over the country and the world. But I know some places in Philly lately have been trying to take these steps where they don't provide plastic bags. Like I can think of one thrift store in Philly that they don't. So if you roll in without a canvas bag, without an IKEA bag, like you're carrying that down Center City, Philadelphia. So is there spots out in Arizona that kind of have that mentality maybe?
I wish it was. Honestly, it's almost the opposite. Because of COVID, I would try to take my IKEA bags into the Goodwill outlet, and they had me return the IKEA bags to my car because they didn't want us bringing in our own stuff, which doesn't make sense because it's like, it's the bins. Like we're touching so many other people's stuff. Why? Yeah. And then also it's not super progressive as far as green and being sustainable as much here in Arizona as it is in Oregon. In Oregon, they've pretty much banned plastic bags or single-use plastic bags. And when you do need to use a plastic bag, you have to purchase it, and it's like a thicker material, so it lasts a long time to encourage people to reuse them. I wish it was a little bit more required because I know that we use a lot of plastic bags here in Arizona.
Girl, same. I think I have like a mountain of them underneath my sink, and every time I open it, I'm like, I'm so sorry. And then I just close the door. But I try to find ways to be productive with that. I think we're all just trying to find ways to be sustainable. Like we've said in past episodes, you gotta do it for yourself and what hits you the hardest. You can't do it for the clout. You can't do it for, the trend. You can't do it for the following or the gram. You got to do what works for you and your business. And I think that's an interesting point with the bins, because I think, again, such a difference in state to state, because I couldn't imagine the chaos that would ensue if they told somebody in Philadelphia, New Jersey that they couldn't bring a bag in. I would probably just leave the bins because it would be a hot mess. But do you find there are specific things or maybe specific issues when it comes to sustainability that really hits you and motivates you in your business?
So I mentioned diet a little bit, and I tried the vegan diet for quite a long time and read up a lot of and watched a lot of documentaries. I don't know what you guys call it, but I tried that for a long time, and for me, I couldn't keep up with it, the amount of cooking with everything that I have on my plate. So I do feel like reselling has allowed me to lessen my ecological footprint, if you want to call that. And I do know that reselling or manufacturing clothes takes a lot of resources. And so by reselling, we're able to put things back in circulation. I really enjoy picking up jeans. I like cutting them off for summer and whatnot and distressing them. Started, instead of just throwing out stuff that have holes in them when I find after I buy them, I have an actual death pile where I like forget about it. In my living room where I have like my sewing machine, and once I have a bunch of items, of like 20 items, I will go through and make as much as repairs as I can make. So I did take a sewing class in college, which has helped me learn how to sew and repair things. Well, really the main motivator is just putting things back in circulation and using what we already have, rather than just being such a consumerism society that we just like use it once and throw it out. I think it's important to try to recycle as much as we can.
I was literally about to ask you that. I swear to God, Kiaya, you're right. Like, we're just two peas in a pod, because I literally just said that in last week's episode. Is like, I have a fabric bin, and like, say I did, upcycle jeans. I just throw, and then I have those random leg pieces, and I throw them in this bin back here, and like, I'll use that to upcycle, maybe add like patchwork onto a piece. And I too have a sewing machine. I'm not that great. I'm trying to convince Kiaya to get a sewing machine, because it really does open a lot of doors. She's like, I'm scared. I'm like, sometimes you just got to take risks. That's what it is in the business sometimes. So I was actually going to ask you, do you do any upcycling? Do you plan on doing any upcycling? Like, I know you mentioned distressing jeans and that stuff, but
Yeah, so usually I reserve upcycling for spring and summer for the low cost items. I like to distress and make jean shorts. I also like to do tie-dye. I guess tie-dye was like a big part of last year's 2020 quarantine, but I do enjoy making a lot of like taking vintage t-shirts that might have holes and stuff and distressing them further. But I definitely wait until the spring to do that for some reason, because shoes, jeans, sweaters, and jackets are my top selling categories, and that's usually in the fall and winter that they go up in sales. So I don't really focus on upcycling towards the end of the year, because I really want to focus on fall and winter.
no, I think that's a really valid point about like what's your top selling categories. I think that's awesome. So in regards to like, me and Kiaya, we're big fans of tie-dyeing. We're big fans of distressing. We're both been recently in the creative pocket when it comes to, upcycling, reworking items. So do you find, was there a tool that you used to figure out what those top selling categories were for you? Because I know a lot of resellers want to know that knowledge. Is there a tool that maybe you used and you would recommend?
I actually, with my previous job, I worked in car titles. And so it was like a really boring job. It was the same thing every day, but I did learn how to use Excel spreadsheets. And so I know how to create a pivot table is what it's called. So you highlight what you have, and then you insert, and then go to pivot table. Then you can click and drag the category option and the date sold option down in the rows and columns, and it'll tell you exactly what category sold and the quantity and for what time. So you can see which quarter, and it'll divide it up by quarters, and then it'll divide it up by months. So I am consistently, my top selling category is shoes, then dresses, jackets, and jeans for Q1. So that's kind of why I purchased a shoe palette from Nordstrom's rack. It was mostly supposed to be returns and stuff, but ended up just being shelf pulls that didn't sell from Nordstrom's rack. And so those have been selling super well for me. And so I guess going forward, I definitely want to focus on shoes and kind of only pick up, dresses, jackets, jeans, tops, shorts that really speak to me and that I really love, rather than picking up a lot of bread and butter type clothing. I need to focus more on shoes.
Also, I wanted to dive in because I know that you also just opened your own Instagram shop, or your separate Instagram shop, I should say. So is that primarily, what is your process with that shop, if you want to dive into it? If you don't, I know that you're still working on premiering it, so speak on it what you want, but if you can give a little bit of a teaser into it.
Yeah, definitely. So with my regular Instagram, so it started off as a personal Instagram, and then I changed it to a business Instagram at Tamsin's Thread. And so I've been growing this community, and the type of content I've been putting out has been kind of drawing in and working for the audience of resellers. So whenever I try to do a sale on, my at Tamsin Threads Instagram, although I have, everything linked, I created a website this last year. I have that linked. I have Instagram shopping. So like I have to add items to a catalog on Facebook Manager, Commerce Manager, and then I can tag the products in my posts for Instagram. I'm finding that my audience isn't really willing to pay up for the items that I have. They are a lot of resellers. They're wanting to, get a really good deal, which I'm totally all for, because that's exactly what I do. I really like and prefer to get a good deal on clothes because I know that I can get them cheaper. And so I was finding that I was, trying to promote my products on my Instagram, and I wasn't having as much traction. So I kind of wanted to start fresh and create a new Instagram where I could also incorporate some stylized photo shoots eventually, and I need to figure out how to switch over my Shopify, not my Shopify, my Facebook Commerce Manager, where I can tag my products on my new Instagram that I started. And then I will be able to do live sales over there, story sales, drops, and all that, just to try it out, because I invested in creating this website with Shopify, and I barely make any sales. Like, people just aren't really willing to go to a foreign website when we all use Poshmark, eBay, Mercari. And so with direct sales, I think it'll be better on that Instagram page. So I want to focus on style and thrifted finds and like how to style them using reels. And so I'm hoping that will attract a different kind of audience, an audience that really enjoys secondhand fashion and enjoy putting things together and being creative, and less about tips and tricks for reselling.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I mean, you brought up a lot of things that I would love to jump off on. I think, the whole idea of opening a second account, I definitely want to pick your brain in the DMs about Facebook catalogs, because that's something that I definitely want to do and I definitely want to utilize. But it's like this very intimidating, like, I don't know if I don't want to be like in trouble with anything. So I don't know if I need X, Y, and Z to do Facebook listings, because I have a page and it's linked to Instagram, but just sitting there. So I feel like I'm not utilizing it and I'm just leaving out an entire audience. Same with and I agree with the Shopify. I've heard that multiple times, because I feel like, unlike with the reselling platforms like Poshmark, Mercari, and like I use Depop and stuff like that, there's this just automatic marketing and people know that. But when it comes to like Shopify, you really have to build an audience. I know someone was saying that, like, I think it was Just Likes Pizza was saying, like, when you have that, you really have to like build and funnel people in. So maybe you're making like a landing page for that. You're making sure your SEOs are on spot, which is like, I feel like you kind of have to bump it up versus like Poshmark SEOs. No, you have to kind of funnel that audience in there. So I definitely think that's valid. I think in anything in your business, you got to make it what works for you. And like you said, sometimes it's that quality over quantity aspect. So I think that being able to come in and be like, okay, that's not working for me. How can I work it for myself? And Instagram is popping right now. So it's, especially with live sales and that kind of stuff. So I'm excited to see it, especially if you got vintage stuff. I'm going to be stalking the hell out of that page. But the price point is an interesting thing that I would love to jump off on. Because I think people, especially when you're resellers, you're kind of used to like, oh, I can get this on Dollar Day, or I can get this for like $6, or, at the bins for 50 cents or whatever. But I think sometimes that's a negative thing for us, because we also forget that there's quality and time that people put into their pieces, just the same that we do, and that we need to have that respect for other resellers for doing, the work. How do you I don't want to like stir the pot, but like, how do you feel about that? Is there anything you want to go like talk about on that aspect?
I definitely have come to realize that I need to value my time a little bit better. And that means, thinking about how much I actually invest and put into my business, whether that's financially or time or energy, or even just like opportunity costs. So like not spending time on other things in order to spend time on my business. And so it's really important for me to, value my time and effort and energy a little bit more than I have been, and selling myself a little too short. And especially with Poshmark, I think it's so time consuming, or just reselling in general can be very time consuming if you don't automate it. And so I think we tend to not value our time as much. I mean, when you think about, let's just like, for example, like the disparity, I don't know if I'm using that word correctly, but for example, there's a lot of people who are creating Poshmark courses right now, which I think is totally great, because you put in the time, you put in the energy, you know what's working, and you want a mass way to educate people, because you have a lot of people asking you how you do Poshmark, right? So like, I don't I'm not judging if anyone decides to create a course or to create content or to create freebies in order to build an email list. Like, that's totally awesome. But when you think about what men are doing, and a lot of people are doing that for Amazon, like, people are charging thousands of dollars for Amazon courses. Sellers on Poshmark are so cheap that, like, someone creating a course has to dumb down has to renegotiate their fees. So, like, could they charge more than $50, or will people actually pay it, And so I feel like there's kind of a pay gap in the way that mainly women kind of view their time, their energy, and view how much they can handle, when there's a lot of men out there, in my opinion, who are way, like, overcharging their services. And so as far as, like, resellers kind of being cheap, like, I get that. But on the business side of things, like, I can't afford to make only a few dollars per item. Like, that's just not going to work for my business model. And so as much as I want to provide really good inventory for people and, provide all of the gems that I find in Phoenix, because there's a lot of that here, I need to value my time a little bit better so that I can do the things that I originally set out to do, meaning have reselling so that I can have more flexibility to spend time with family and to create memories and to travel. And so if I don't value my time enough, how do I expect other people to value my time?
Yeah, I think that's a really valid point too, because I just want to clarify too. I'm not trying to call anyone out cheap. Like, I'm not trying to insult anyone by calling them cheap or anything like that. I just noticed with myself, and I've had to switch this mindset, especially now with upcycling items, right? We just talked about this last week with Jay. It's like, how do you price? I think a lot of people want to upcycle items, but they're scared of, the pushback on the pricing. But when people, invest time on sewing these pieces together or, creating these fabrics, it's like, I took a look back on me in the past year and being like, oh, I'm not going to pick up this piece from this reseller because I know I could go find that piece and I could probably pay like $3 for it. But I think as a community, especially supporting each other, like, we have to remember, again, like, that time is valuable, right? If I'm going to spend a whole week reworking a piece, I can't afford to sell it for $2 because I just invested that time. I said it before, I believe, on a couple podcasts before, like, or last week, it's like the only thing that's non-refundable in life is time. Like, you can refund money, you can refund all this stuff, but your time you can never get back. So if you're investing that time for a week to either, like, rework a piece, curate a collection, research maybe like this limited edition rare find of a vintage piece, I think as a community we have to understand that it's about also supporting each other, not like, hey, I can find that for $3, but let me, like, pour back into your cup. And I think that's where you create those amazing relationships where it's like, I value you and your work and you value me and my hard work, and then maybe we can foster that together. And maybe we'll collab in the future, or maybe we can, like, branch off and do a business together. But I think it's that whole idea that we have to get out of, like, not the cheap mentality, but the whole, like, oh, I can find this for $3, or I can do this. I don't need to, like, pay that person for their time and their effort and their hard work. Because at the end of the day, if the table's reversed, you would feel like shit if someone came to you like that. So it's like, you kind of have to put yourself in the other person's position. That's why, like, if I buy from another reseller, I don't even like to send offers. Like, I'll just buy it outright. Like, this jacket, like, I wasn't like, hey, Sarah, can you do it for like 45? I was like, 58 shipped, you got it. Because I know that you looked for it. I know that you put time into researching it. I know that you did all the hard work. So let me value it. And then we can kind of foster that growth together. And it's a respect thing, you know what I mean? And I think a lot of people forget, like, it's hard unless you take that time to reflect on your own self. then like how you want to be treated as a reseller is also how you treat other resellers. That's my TED talk for today. So
Oh yeah. And while you're talking, I'm just like thinking about like, man, there's so much I could improve on. Like I'm not perfect, and the way that I value other people's time too. So it's something that we're all working on, because I think it's important that we value our time and also value other people's time. And just like you were saying.
Yeah, and I think that's just growing the community, right? That's like getting less toxicity out, and it's supporting another small business. Again, like I said, I just and it, no doubt, like I'm not trying to be on the pedestal or think higher of myself. It's just something I feel like I want to share, because I feel like a lot of people, unless you really address that, unless you really confront that and how you are, like I said, 2020 was a year to kind of spend some quality time with yourself and maybe make some changes, some personal changes on yourself. And I think that was one thing for me. I was like, instead of me being like, why is this person charging so much? Like, okay, what if the table was reversed? What if I spent a week, hand stitching this item and sewing it and doing the patterns and like, taking this time, like how would I feel if someone just came to me and was like, you should sell it to me for $6 because I could do that and I could find it. And it's like, at the end of the day, it's like I still worked my ass off for this, you know what I mean? And other people do too. So I know that was kind of like a rear off here, but we've discussed it, like part of sustainability is profit. You know what I mean? Like as people getting a fair wage for their work. So if you're all about like big fast fashion companies paying their workers what they're due, then to me, I'm like, that mentality applies to everybody, including our community.
I definitely agree with that, Caitlin. And I feel like as resellers, we get a lot of slack of like what we do is not a legit like real business, like we're not doing anything, when in fact I feel like it's like one of the most important jobs ever. We're trying to save clothing, we're trying to save the world in general from a bunch of items going into a landfill, and we do spend a lot of time in what we do. If you think of everything that us as resellers do, we source, we clean, we hand fix items, we have to photograph, we have to list, we have to do like a ton of jobs just to get one job done. So I feel like if you don't, as a reseller, if you don't admire like what you do, like your craft, then other people won't. But if you take initiative and you take like, oh, what I do seriously, and other people will see that same thing. Don't undermine your work. Don't undermine your effort. Don't undermine none of that, because you do what you do for a reason, and you do it great and you do it well. So other people will recognize that if you recognize that. Don't show up at a live sale and like half-ass in like, oh, this is just a H&M top and it's this and this price. Like, no, like sell that shit. Sell it because it's awesome and is what you do. So, someone is going to think the same.
I'm sorry, I'm like, I have the microphone on my TED Talk here, but I want to tie it back into sustainability, because I think people are like, well, that's a random tangent to go off. But I think that's a whole part of being sustainable, right? Like I said, like if you want people to be fairly, a fair wage for these big companies, like, you should be about your fellow brother or sister and reselling, getting the fair wage as well for their time. Just like you said with taking sustainable packaging, okay? So we all know, we've had this discussion that like maybe sustainable packaging is, you're paying a little bit more cost of goods for those items, right? Like recycled paper, tissue paper, the big companies love to price it up for buying this sustainable stuff. So I think that's the other thing people have to understand too. If you're buying from a sustainable company, the prices might be a little bit more, because the cost of goods, the time going into it for the company to be sustainable, everyone's got to make a profit for a small business. So I think that's also part of the sustainability, is that if you want these small businesses that really focus on lowering their carbon footprint, take their time into maybe not like cramming thousands of items into your face, but like curating a smaller collection, or rework, upcycling pieces, whatever it is. There are extra cost of goods that, like, I know with upcycling, like, I just balled out at Michael's. Like, a sewing machine ain't cheap. Fabric thread ain't cheap. Needles ain't cheap. Fabric glue ain't cheap. You want bedazzled things? Guess what? That's an extra cost. You know what I mean? So you want pins on an item? You want studs on it? That's an extra cost to that person that's making that item. So if you want like these sustainable pieces or a sustainable company, sometimes you gotta pay a little bit more for the quality. And I think people, I mean, am I alone in that? Do you guys want to, like, I feel like I'm on a, like, I'm just going off right now. Maybe the coffee hit, but you know, I think, do you guys agree that maybe that is part of being sustainable, is maybe having this less like fast fashion, cheap designed stuff and paying for your quality?
I definitely agree with that. I think also like when we offer, like, I could sell a lot of stuff. I could be really good at being like a listing machine, but as far as like what's sustainable physically for my body and stress levels, it's more important for me to take the time to curate and pull together clothes and shoes that I specifically like. But I do believe that that can have a cost, because you know, you do take the time and the energy and the thought process and the research and going on to, you know, on Pinterest and figuring out what kind of items you want to pick out, and picking, like, you are literally going through thousands of clothes to find that one perfect top that you've been looking for. And I think that's, for a lot of people, that's why they don't like thrifting in general, is because it, you know, you have to go through so much junk to find that one gold piece. And so I definitely do agree with that, you know, we have something to offer that a lot of other companies don't, which is that curation and that time and that energy put towards being more sustainable.
Yeah, and I agree too with now diving into like vintage. People are like, well, you found this at Goodwill, so you should sell it to me for $6. I'm like, yeah, but this has, like, I've had to put a lot of research, I've had to put a lot of time, I've had to do like a lot of extra work to curate this piece. And it, you know, I always tell people, it's like you're kind of paying a little bit more to have a story in a vintage piece. Like, you're adding a new chapter to this piece's story. So like, yeah, is like $58 a lot for an item? Yeah, because it's not $6, it's not on dollar day. Like, I'm all about finding those, you know, amazing finds at the thrift store, but I also can recognize quality. Like, and for vintage pieces, I feel like they've been around for so long. And also with vintage, I don't know if you guys know, like the materials made of is like not that great for the environment, so I'm really trying to keep it out of a landfill. But like, I feel like there's a pushback with that with vintage sometimes, like, why is this so expensive? But it's like, there's a history to this piece. And so I kind of tell people, like, it's okay to sit it out, it's okay to wait for the right buyer, because I'd rather someone pay for the quality of that piece and really love that piece and wear it and like add to it than like someone just go on a low ball offer and be like, okay, yeah, here's like $6. Like, I want someone to be genuinely excited about that piece when it comes to vintage. So I think that's just one thing I'm noticing with this transition into vintage, is like, it's okay to price higher. It's okay to value my work, because there's a lot of work that goes in behind this, and I'm not really in for like the cheap turnaround, or not. I don't like using the word cheap, but like the fast turnaround. Do you notice that maybe that's like a way or something that kind of connects with you, or a way that you're kind of transitioning now with opening this second shop, is like?
Yeah, I think I mean, I don't want to like price gouge, because I think that's what resellers are afraid of doing when they are undervaluing their items. I'm not trying to price gouge, but I do want people to realize that these items have value, and they're amazing, and they're one of a kind, and they're rare, and you're not going to find them everywhere. Like, so I recently shared this on my Instagram, but I found this, I was at the Goodwill outlet with my sister-in-law, and she pulled this one out of the bin for me. And she's not like a reseller, but she does like to thrift. and she pulled out this 80s vintage silk lining sequined bomber jacket, and it had the coolest pattern on it. It was like geometric with like lime green, pink, coral, blue, and a little bit of navy, and it had black on the cuffs, and it's just like absolutely gorgeous. But I listed it on Poshmark for $149, and it sold overnight. And I felt kind of guilty about pricing it that high, but I was like, you know what, I'm gonna try this. I'm gonna try it out, because usually I underprice my vintage items, I think. And I couldn't believe that it sold overnight. And I think part of it does have to do with keywords and, searchable words and tagging like 80s, 90s, statement, streetwear, Instagram, like, because I do include those tags at the bottom of my listing if I think it's like Instagram worthy. And so I just couldn't believe that it had sold overnight for $149. Like, that is just complete bonkers to me. And there are a lot of vintage pieces that haven't sold for that much. And so it was even more shocking, because sometimes I can't get some vintage pieces to sell.
Yeah, I think that's definitely a thing. But I'm stoked to hear that. And the reason why I'm stoked, because like you made the bag that's worth your time and your value and your hard work. So that's like the number one thing I'm excited about. But I'm also excited for that person, because when someone like actually values that piece and they're willing to pay like what it's worth, I'm like, that person is stoked. That person wants to have it. That person is going to give it a whole new life. And at the end of the day, like vintage to me is just like continuing this piece's story. And it's like adding your part of the story onto it. So that's what makes me excited about that, because I just love when people do like we all just love full price buyers, right? Like that's just like the best thing ever. Bless them. They're angels. But especially when it comes to vintage, like you said with the price gouging, it's like it seems to be like this person's overpricing their stuff or whatever. But it's like I've had that before where it's like it's a limited edition 90s print, silk print, and this person just went off on me and was like, you are like price gouging and everyone has different ideas of reason. And I'm like, well, you could have just done a reasonable offer. We could have just had a civil conversation about this. Also, like, how is your day going for just blowing up my comments like this? But at the end of the day, I'm like, this piece was obviously not meant for you. Because if you're feeling that way and it's not like an, oh my God, this is exactly what I want. This is exactly like me in an artistic form in this piece of vintage clothing, then it's just not the right piece for you. You know what I mean? And it's like, that's okay. Like, I think I'm coming to terms with letting things like, obviously using keywords and like love an overnight sale. But I think I'm coming to terms with like, it's okay if something sits. Like, it's okay if it waits a little bit longer, because it's just going to wait for the right person to go to. And I'd rather go to the right person that's going to like rock the shit out of it and get the full use out of it. And like, at the other end of that scope is like that person's going to, maybe they make reels, like maybe they shout you out for that purchase. Like maybe it gives a bullhorn to your business because that person loves that piece and they know they got it. And it's almost like, I know you said you did consignment, and like with consignment, right? Like once you do like consignment with someone, that they know you're their consignment person, right? They're not like usually a one-time person. They're going to come back multiple times because they're like, oh, that's my consignment person. She does the work. We split the profits. And I feel like that's the same thing it is with vintage. Like when you find that person that you can like kind of connect with, or they have pieces that you really love and you're willing to pay for it, like you kind of develop that personal relationship with them. Like, oh, Sarah's my vintage girl. Like I go to Sarah to buy vintage stuff, or like I go to this person on Poshmark to buy vintage stuff, because like it's almost like when people buy luxury is kind of how I view it. Like when you buy luxury resale, you usually have like that one person you're going to go to, right? Like that's my luxury person. I know the items are authentic. I know like they come in, they're good. So I feel like it's kind of the same thing with vintage. It's like, that's that person, that I go to. So I think I'm becoming more comfortable with sitting and letting it have its worth and going to the right home. Like, I still want to make profit. Like getting a bag is still part of my game, but I'd rather have a happy customer and that piece go to like a loving new home.
I agree. And I do have a couple returning customers, and I do sell contemporary or modern pieces as well. So one thing I like to do for vintage is I do like to see what is trending and what are the young kids wearing these days. I know that sounds really dumb, but seeing, if you look and see what famous YouTubers are wearing, if you're looking, because that's like social media selling is also kind of YouTube. Like if people are wearing specific styles and brands, you kind of want to pick that out for vintage so that it will sell faster, because otherwise you could be sitting on a vintage piece for a very long time. But I also pick out contemporary modern pieces that also fit those trends and styles. So that's kind of why I sell a little bit of both. I mean, I'm already at the thrift store, so I like to look at the actual fashion part of the item a lot of times and not focus as much on the brands, although I will pick up a brand, if I know it's going to draw a lot of attention to my shop. It's kind of a weird balance, but being pickier so that it's trendy and a good brand and a good price, but also picking up vintage that kind of matches that as well.
Oh yeah, Kiaya's all about that. She's all about not really looking at the brand, but style, right?
Yeah, I definitely look at style. That's my thing. Like, I don't have a certain aesthetic in my closet. And I definitely don't shop brands unless it's like a bucket list brand, like something that I've seen that I really want to try to get. And if I catch it, I'll get it. Like Rothy's, haven't found those yet. Definitely want to find those. And what is the other thing? Patagonia. Never found that, but I want to find it. And if I see it, I'll just grab it just because it's like, oh, it's on my bucket list. I'll check that off. But I definitely just go by style. Like if it's something that like is in the rack or like on the shelf and it attracts my eye and I'm like, I can see this like being real good for someone or like popping for me, I'll definitely pick it up. But going back to what you guys were talking about, like a little before that with like your pricing and stuff, I feel like we pay a lot of money for like brands out there like Yeezy. How much is his stuff worth? I mean, and look, we can kind of create that ourselves. No shade to Yeezy, but like no shade. But I mean, his
like,
stuff
please
is like,
don't sue us.
Yeah, his items are like expensive as hell, and it's like, you can either find that item or create it. So why not? Why can't we price our items? What we know their worth is, and feel proud of it. Like what I don't want to feel ashamed for finding that awesome vintage piece and pricing it for $149 and it sold overnight because someone was evidently looking for it. They were looking for that and they know that they're not going to find it anywhere else. So it's like you either going to pass or try to, wait on it and someone else is going to get it. And I just love when that happens. Like when you get like the lowball offers or, something is sitting in it out of nowhere, someone just comes and picks it up for full price because it's what they're looking for. It's what they're looking for. They know it's worth and they know it's like a one of a kind thing. So they're like, I got to get it now before, you wait on it and it's not there anymore.
I think it's really important that with Poshmark, the vintage market is definitely growing on there, but you have to cross list. Like I quit my job January of 2020, my corporate titles job or whatever. And Denali, Do It Your Thrift, and a couple other resellers are like, okay, what's your game plan before you quit? What are you doing? And they were all very much adamant on getting on different platforms. And I think that's so important because something that has a lot of value might not be perceived as valuable on Poshmark because Poshmark has a different audience and a smaller audience than eBay that has millions of users that have been using eBay for decades pretty much. And so it's important that you are on multiple platforms so that you can get more visibility. And so, yeah, I'm already on eBay, Poshmark, a little bit on Mercari. I tried Depop for a while, but yes, I'm also on Instagram and trying to cross post and promote my listings on Instagram too. You would just want to create as much visibility as you can because you never know who's going to see that vintage jacket and be like, yes, that is me. I'm picking that out. That is perfect. That's exactly what I'm looking for.
But I know Kiaya has a question too. This is her baby question, so I want to let her take the wheel.
Yeah, so the question that I have that I love to ask all of our guests is something like I said, it was asked to me during an interview, and it's, what is the focus of your business? And I like to ask it because I feel like this is an important thing for us as business owners, not just resellers, because we're business owners, y'all. Business owners to know, like, what is the focus of your business? Where do you see it going? Like, what is your main thing that you focus on and want your business to exceed to?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Part of me doesn't know because I am still figuring it out. Even as like a full-time reseller, it's been over a year that I've been full-time. I'm still figuring things out. I'm still changing things up. I'm still trying to decide, what do I want for my business? Like, do I want to get into a warehouse? Do I want to hire actual employees? But I know for certain short term, I really, really, really would like to be able to move all of my inventory out of my house and into the garage. And that includes getting, I have to get a couple quotes. This is very short term. It's on my to-do list. I have to get a couple quotes to get the garage insulated because currently I can't put any shoes out there. And because shoes are my highest category, I have a lot of them. And in Arizona, it gets to like 120 degrees outside in the summer, and that would destroy shoes. And so that's like number one, is to get the inventory out of my office so that I don't have to like look at it all the time. But then number two, I think would definitely be building a brand wider, like with a wider scope than just within the reselling community. Like, I do really want to build and find that audience that is going to appreciate the clothes that I'm picking up. So that is going to be a big challenge, and I understand that. And also finding ways to be more and more efficient within my reselling business that's already existing. So part of that is deciding what I want to do with my website. Do I want to have all my inventory on there, or do I want to make my website more of a resource for other resellers? So trying to decide where I'm going with that focus. But I know for certain short term, I want to work on getting my inventory out of my office and in my garage, all nicely organized, and then build the brand within shop at shop.tamsinsthreads on Instagram.
Thank you guys so much for coming back and hanging out with Caitlin and I on another episode of Flip That Jawn. We hope that you enjoyed listening to our conversation with Tamsin just as much as we enjoyed speaking with her. We know it gave you some food for thought to keep growing on your own business journey. Next week, come along with us as we have a conversation with our special guest, Tay, at TayReloaded_ on Instagram. We will continue to talk about sustainability and how the reselling community has impacted our business. Don't forget to give us a thumbs up and subscribe to Flip That Jawn. See you next week, guys.